This is 5.6 Math 50, solving equations containing decimals. So there's a few different ways you can solve equations with decimals. I'm going to show you two different ways, but in the beginning I'm going to just show you the traditional way how to solve these. A couple of these are one step. So for question number 1, again, this is 5.6. It's saying x minus 1.5 equals 8. So just like you would a normal, simple one-step equation, you want to get x by itself. So I want to get rid of this negative 1.5, so I'm going to add 1.5 to both sides. So I have to add 1.5. I'm adding the same thing or subtracting if that's what you need to do, the same thing. These cancel, so you just have plain old x. And you use the rule of how do you add or subtract decimals. You keep them lined up, and when you add this you get 9.5. And you can check this. Plug 9.5 in for x and subtract 1.5, you should get 8.0. The next one, a simple division problem. It's saying negative 2y equals 6.7. So to undo division multiplication, you're going to divide both sides by negative 2. So y will equal, you're going to use your long division. So 2 goes into 6.7. So 2 goes into 6 3 times. 3 times 2 is 6. Bring down the 7. 2 goes into 7 3 times. So that's 6. Subtract. Bring down a 0. And 2 times 5 is 10. So the answer is going to be negative 3.35. Negative because you're dividing and you have one negative. And you can check this by multiplying negative 2 times that number. You should get 6.7. Next one. This is now a two-step. Okay. 1.2x plus 5.8 equals 8.2. So for this one, you're going to first want to get rid of this 5.8. This has to join forces with this 8.2. So we want to get rid of this, we're going to subtract, do the opposite. So subtract 5.8. Okay, so this is now gone. You have just 1.2x on this side. And here you have to make sure your decimals are lined up. We have to borrow here. So this becomes 12. 12 minus 8 is 4. And 7 minus 5 is 2. So this is 2.4, and then divide 1.2. Now here's a trick for you. You could see this, you could move this decimal over 1, and then you would move that over 1. So really this is 24, equivalent of 24 divided by 12, which is 2. Or you just do your long division. Example number 4, okay? And I have this written wrong. It's 4x. So for this one, we have, this is going to be a multi-step equation. We want to get our variables together, and we want to get our numbers on the other side. So I always start with the smaller variable. So this is the smaller one. So I'm going to swing 4x to the other side, subtract 4x. So I get 3x plus 3.2 equals negative 1.6. Don't forget that negative. Now I want to get rid of 3.2, so I'm going to subtract 3.2. Okay, so I have 3x on this side, and this, I have a negative and a negative. I get a bigger negative, negative 4.8. And then divide 3 into both of these. So off to the side, I'm going to do 3 goes into 4.8. 3 goes into 4 one time. Subtract, bring down the 8, and 6 times 3 is 18 with no remainder. So this is 1.6, but it's negative because I have one negative. Okay. Question number 5. Looks like we have some distributive property here. So you have to first distribute 5 times x, 5 times 0.36. So 5 times x is 5x. 5 times 0.36. So I would do 0.36 times 5. I'd write it like that. 6 times 5 is 30. That's 15, and 3 is 18. Move the decimal 2 over, so it's 1.8. So 5 times 0.36 is 1.8 equals negative x plus 2.4. So just like the problem above, this is smaller. I want to bring this over here. So I'm adding an x, adding 1x. So I have 6x minus 1.8 equals 2.4. Now I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to add 1.8. Remember, you're always doing the opposite. So if it's a negative, you're adding. If it's a positive, you subtract. So 6x equals, this is 4.2. And divide both sides by 6. And x6 goes into 4.2. So 6 doesn't go into 4, but it goes into 42 7 times evenly. So it's 0.7. And the last problem I'm going to show you, this is full of decimals. I'm going to show you a trick. I like to use this method whenever I have a problem that's loaded with decimals. You don't have to. You could do this by subtracting 2.3 from 1.65 and then dividing by 0.5. You can do it that way. Or what you could do, if you don't like decimals, you look at this problem and you say, this is the most number of places to move it to the right to get rid of the decimal. So it's the same as multiplying this whole problem by 100. So if I move this 2 places over, I have to move this decimal 2 places over, and I have to move this 2 places over. Okay? So if I move this 2 places over, I get once is a 5, one more is a 50y. If I move this 2 places over, 1, 2, this becomes 230. And if I move this 2 places over, this becomes 165. These two equations are equivalent, okay? So now I'm going to subtract 230 from 165. So 50y equals, now when you have a negative and a positive, you're going to subtract the 2 and take the sign of what you have more of. So off to the side, I do 230 minus 165. That gives us 65. And it's going to be negative because we have more negative. So negative 65. Okay. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 50. So y is equal to. Now, how do you do this problem? You could do this in several ways. You can first, if you wanted to simplify this fraction, you could do that. You could say, you could make it smaller, like divide both of these by 5. If you want to do that, you can. Or you can do your long division. 50 goes into 65. Okay, 50 goes into 65 once. So that's 50. Subtract. You get 15. Bring down the 0. And then 50 times 3 is 150. So the answer is 1.3, but it's negative because you're dividing with one negative. And that concludes section 5.6, and it actually concludes this chapter. So please look for a test coming soon.